and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. אלוהי נצור לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה ולמחללי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי אלוהי נצור לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה ולמחללי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה אלוהי נצור לשוני מרע ושפתי מדבר מרמה ולמחללי נפשי תדום ונפשי כעפר לכל תהיה
Matov Umanaim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, how good it is when friends and loved ones can gather together as we do this Shabbat, even if it's only through the wonder of technology. We're so glad that you're joining us this Shabbat evening for our Shabbat evening service. I'm Rabbi Daniel Reeser. I'm joined in the leadership of this evening service by our new assistant cantor, Danielle Rodniski, as well as our rabbinical student intern, Ariel Milan Polisar. We hope that wherever it is you may be joining us from, that you and your loved ones are well and staying safe in these continually challenging times. We all need a little bit of Shabbat, a little bit of rest in these times that are so exhausting for us, not only physically, but also emotionally. This Shabbat has a very special name in the Jewish tradition. It's called Shabbat Chazon because it's the last Shabbat before the Jewish day known as Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av, we remember the many destructions that have befallen the Jewish people, including the destruction of the first and second temples. And on this Shabbat, which precedes Tisha B'Av, we read from the Haftarah the prophecy of Isaiah, where he proclaimed that doom and gloom would fall upon the Jewish people on this coming day of Tisha B'Av. Chazon means prophecy, referring to that prophecy of Isaiah, predicting doom and gloom. We ourselves have been living through a period not quite as destructive as the times that Isaiah predicted would come to the Jewish people so many thousands of years ago, but nevertheless times of tremendous struggle. We've seen illness all around us, death, economic devastation, civil unrest, racial violence. We are living through something similar to what Isaiah was describing all those many years ago. What we need now is not a chazon like Isaiah's, not a prophecy, not a prediction of doom and gloom. We need a different kind of chazon. We need a vision. We need the ability to be able to open our eyes and see the world around us, to see the world as it is, and most importantly, to see our way through this darkness, to find our way out to the other side, knowing that there are good people all around us who will help us to make our way, even when times get as hard as they possibly can. May this be our people's mission, not only this Shabbat Chazon, but all of the time. Amen. Let us help to light the way through the darkness by welcoming Shabbat and kindling lights. If you have Shabbat lights of your own that you'd like to kindle wherever you're joining us from, we'll invite you to do so now. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue with our Psalms to welcome Shabbat. We learned this one last week. Let's see if you can remember your part. The only words are Yailai. continue with Lecha Dodi.
We continue with our call to prayer. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam vaed. Please join with me in the words on the screen in front of you. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, v'hinei tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, v'hinei tov me'od. There was there was morning, Vayhi erev, Vayhi boker, Tov me'od. Vayhi erev, Vayhi boker, Tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, v'hinei tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, v'hinei tov me'od. In some ways, the prayer that we just offered represents one of the least insightful spiritual noticings that our ancestors put into our prayer book. They looked around at nature. They saw that there was evening, there was morning, there was sunrise, there was sunset, there was life, there was death, there was birth, there was destruction, all kinds of opposites all around them. And they said, we see the natural world and we see that we are a part of it. But it was the next thing that they said that had real spiritual depth to it. They didn't just see the world around them full of all of these opposites, full of all of these warring forces, and say it is a cosmos of chaos. No, instead, they said it is a cosmos that is good. Hine tov ma'od. We see that the world is full of warring opposites, and still we believe that there is something out there that's organizing all of these forces, something out there that cares what happens here, that cares about us, and that loves each of us personally and individually. And so our sages put a next prayer in the prayer book. They said, Ahavat Olam. They said, this is a world that is full of love, and Olam shel Ahava. They said, this is a place that's not just about evening and morning, not just about birth and death, not just about creation and destruction. This is a place where good things can and indeed do happen. A place where we can find ourselves, even in the darkest of times, even in evening, even as it's getting dark, feeling some sort of divine love. They said, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha. Veshinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uvshochbecha uvekumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha Leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeitz yedchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Three luminaries of the civil rights movement died this week. Representative John Lewis, Reverend C.T. Vivian, and Charles Evers each worked to bend the arc of history ever towards justice, taking step after step in order to create a brighter, better, more equitable future for our brothers and sisters of color and for our society as a whole. The loss of these leaders leaves us reeling during a summer of darkness that has reminded us over and over again that there is still so much work to be done. We mourn the loss of these bright lights, and we celebrate their lives. We honor the memories of those who have died when we lift up the torch of their values, when we choose to live in the way that they encouraged us to live, getting into good trouble, marching ever forward, hand in hand, to overcome divisiveness, closed-mindedness, and hatred, until someday, God willing, we will reach the promised land. This melody, which I think will be familiar, was sung at the March on Washington, a march which Representative Lewis attended and at which he also spoke.
Leda
אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. We now take a few moments for the reflections of our hearts. We continue privately. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו
One of the best parts about summer services at WRT is that we have the opportunity to hear not just from our rabbis and cantors, but to hear the wisdom of our congregants. And this Shabbat is, of course, no different. We are pleased to welcome as our guest Darshanit, our guest Devar Torah deliverer, our guest sermonizer, Dr. Deborah Kolodner. Deb has been a congregant at WRT for 8 years, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her family in a minute. But before I do so, I want to acknowledge that I had the great pleasure of getting to travel with Deb and her family to Israel this past December. Deb and her husband John and their 4 kids, and also her father-in-law Harry, were part of our family trip to Israel. It was really a pleasure to be with your family then and to get to know all of the members of your family better there. And we're looking forward to hearing the wisdom you have to offer our congregation tonight. So without any further ado, let me introduce Dr. Deborah Kolodner. Deborah Kolodner is a cardiologist and assistant professor of medicine at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. Her specialty is cardiac and vascular ultrasound, and she was involved in diagnosing cardiac and vascular complications of COVID by ultrasound this spring. Her family has been a member of WRT in our Sharing Shabbat community for the past 8 years. She is mom to Emily, James, Sadie, and Ethan, and also to 2 guinea pigs, 1 bird, 1 dog named Teddy, and a horse named Bo. Please welcome with me Dr. Deborah Kolodner.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi Reeser, for the honor of giving the Devar Torah today. And thank you for the WRT community and sharing Shabbat. That's really been our spiritual home these past 8 years. We also feel so grateful we were able to participate in the WRT family trip to Israel. You know, it was just this past December and we still speak about it like it was yesterday. But of course, now it seems like a lifetime ago. So today we are reading Devarim, the first portion in the book of Deuteronomy. In Hebrew, Devarim means words, and the dew in Deuteronomy refers to the number 2. These are fitting names in light of the subject of the Parsha and the entirety of the 5th book of the Torah. Devarim is the second telling or retelling of the story of Israelites' journey, but this time from Moses' perspective. In this final book, Moses is speaking directly to the people as they make their final preparations to enter the promised land. For nearly 40 years now, they've wandered in the desert, and Moses himself knows he will die, and the Israelites will enter the promised land without him. The Parsha is the first in a series of speeches that Moses makes to retell the story of the Israelites and prepare them for the journey ahead without him. Now that they are ready to cross into Israel, he's speaking to the second generation of those who had left Egypt. So he begins by reminding them of where their ancestors began, their physical journey, and then he reminds them of the mistakes along the way. He rebukes them for the incident of the 12 spies sent to Israel, during which they failed to trust in God to provide them, and they chose instead to believe the stories of the 10 sent ahead, who reported negatively on the conditions in the promised land. They said it was inhabited by giants and the cities heavily fortified. It was that loss of faith that led God to require the Jews to wander for another 40 years until that enslaved generation was gone. Moses then goes on to describe their military victories and defeats. The defeats, he tells them, occurred when they entered lands that God had given to others, and God was not with them in battle. And the victories he describes as partnerships with God. Devarim ends with Moses asking God for the opportunity to join the Israelites in the land of Israel, but God rejects this and announces that Joshua, one of the 2 spies who came back with a positive report, will lead the people into Israel. Moses tells Joshua that he should trust God and he does not have to fear others since the Lord is with them. Ultimately, then, Devarim is a lecture about faith. Moses is preparing the people to face new challenges and always return to faith when obstacles come their way. He unquestionably realizes that the transition to Joshua will be difficult. There are so many questions that this portion raises since it recounts 40 years of history, but one of which is a question of faith and fairness. Moses, who led the Jews faithfully for 40 years, is not allowed to join them in the Holy Land, primarily because others did not demonstrate sufficient faith in the Lord. God held Moses responsible for the lack of faith as the leader of his people. Whether or not you feel that this was fair, it was a message of accountability. In choosing leaders among the tribes, Moses reminds them, choose among the wise and the fair. All of this very good advice for the people of the future Israel. But how do we find faith when we do not have God telling us what to do, which battles to fight, which to avoid? As we face the uncertainty of our own time, a global pandemic, a period of heightened racial tensions, political division, we could imagine how the Israelites may have felt, afraid to enter the unknown, questioning their faith. We may not have been wandering the desert for 40 years, but we've been in some form of quarantine for 4 months. And where can we find that faith? Well, we can find it in each other, in watching what others are doing to make a contribution in this difficult period. As Rabbi Reeser said, I'm a cardiologist and I work at Columbia, New York Presbyterian. In the beginning of March, at the start of the surge in New York City, there were so many unknowns. Within the medical community, we were not sure that masks would be sufficient to protect healthcare workers caring for COVID patients. What we did know, however, was that we did not have enough of them. And this knowledge, coupled with the daily drumbeat of the dwindling counts of ICU beds and ventilators, was difficult. But in challenging times, leaders rise to the occasion. And true leadership in March did not come from some faraway place. It came from all around us. It came from within. In my department, everyone came in with whatever PPE they had from home, from office, from Amazon, but they all came. Residents and fellows in training worked tirelessly. Members of the community, companies, even law firms donated supplies. And our department leaders walked the halls, checking in, asking about our families. We spoke to friends from medical school and residency that we hadn't heard from in some time, just to check in. Realizing the isolation that providers felt, the hospital began to play songs over the loudspeaker, fight song for every COVID extubation and discharge, so everyone could hear there were victories among the losses, and everyone contributed to those victories. We now know that masks and PPE do indeed work, and the learning that's happened in caring for those early patients with COVID will propel us forward. But it's not just healthcare workers. Within our WRT community, there have been so many that have been called by conviction and faith, a desire to help, to assist in these uncertain times. We've seen it in so many ways, from checking in on those most vulnerable, forming pen pals, packaging, donating food to assist with the heightened levels of food insecurity that we're currently seeing, coming together, working together, and giving together. We create the faith in each other that will sustain us in the challenges we are facing now and ahead. We can also look to the courageous examples of those among us who fight for justice, providing a path forward for us all, like Moses telling the Jewish people and Joshua to have faith in God. Martin Luther King famously said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." I hope that is true, but it takes work and sacrifice to make it happen. As the cantor said, another example of someone who inspired faith in all of us is John Lewis, who passed a week ago today. There are so many ways in which we can find hope and faith in everything he did. Faith in the goodness of humanity and the ability to forgive and heal. There was one story that I saw this week that I felt best illustrated who John Lewis was. Representative Lewis had been viciously attacked when the Freedom Riders stopped in Rock Hill, South Carolina. At the time, John Lewis could not see the faces of his attackers. But some 48 years later, in 2009, one of those assailants sought forgiveness from Congressman Lewis. He did not want to be remembered as a racist. To his family, his loved ones, he wanted to make amends. And how did Mr. Lewis greet him? He greeted him in his office. He hugged him and he spoke with him for over an hour. John Lewis forgave him. John Lewis knew that forgiveness and empathy could be a shining example for everyone, a path forward to a more just and equitable society. He said he had never questioned whether to accept the apology. Quoting John Lewis, that's what the movement was always about, to have the capacity to forgive and move towards reconciliation. And on that note, as we approach whatever the rest of 2020 has in store for us, it's perhaps too much to hope for God or Moses to speak to us directly for guidance and direction. Instead, I wish all of you the ability to find faith and hope all around you, in your loved ones, your friends, and among those in this community. May you find inspiration in leaders like John Lewis as we face the uncertainties of the coming weeks and months ahead together. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Deb. Thank you so much for sharing those beautiful words of wisdom with us. Something that I'm going to take with me from what you shared is that we don't know how long the road is ahead of us, but that if we can find comfort and find a little bit of, I don't know if joy is the right word, but solace in being with those who we love and connecting with those who we love and looking for those people who are helping, I think that we will be much better off. So thank you so much for sharing those words. As we move into our prayer for healing, we think about those who are in need of some special attention, some special love from us, some special outreach. We think of those who are in need of our healing. If there is somebody who you are thinking of who is in need of such healing, feel free to say their name aloud or to write it in the chat if you are on Facebook or YouTube Live. WRT is thinking of the following: Martin Schiff, Deborah Kapnick, Nicole Shusey, Ray Josell, Amelia Austin, Joyce Schertzer, Leah Greenspan, Aviva Tzila Bat Esther Bela, Dan Sokoloff, Jeffrey Millman, Chava Bat Sara, Eliyahu Chaim Ben Fredel, Sheila Fried, Tanya Romanoff, Yitzchak Yona Ben May, Yaakov Hirsch Ben Rachel, Malka Tzipora Bas Rachel, Tamar Bat Malka, Heschel Meir Ben Davida Chana, David Ze'ev Ben Fruma Etel. We hold all of those names in our hearts and send them a wish for healing with Misha Berach. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lehamotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. We turn now to our concluding prayers. Please join me in Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'tet gedula le'yotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama,
שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו כחמונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. So just as we think of those who we send healing love to, we also think of those to whom it is hard to send healing love to whom we'd like to be embracing, we'd like to be sending a message, calling them up, or whatever it is we do to show them our love. And so we think of those people in this time as we move towards our Mourner's Kaddish. If you are in a period of Jewish mourning, when you hear your loved one's name said aloud, feel free to rise if you wish. Tonight, we remember those in the WRT community who we've laid to rest in recent days. Mitchell Slater, husband of Pamela Slater, father of Lana, Amelia, and Julia Slater, son of Rita Slater and brother of Andrew Slater. John Simon, brother of Ann Elman. Doris Lou Beck, mother of Bruce Beck. Paul Coburn, father of Eric Coburn. Donald Kay, brother of Harriet Sobel. Randy Guggenheimer Jr., father of Randy Guggenheimer. Paulina Muchnick, great-aunt of Cantor Danielle Rudnitsky. Andrew DeJesus, son of Evelyn and Mark Roller, and on the yahrzeit of their death. Emily Bauer, Riva Blatt, Frida Bosses, Paul Brichta, Harry Burns, Arthur Epps, Herbert Falk, William German, Jeffrey Gilman, Gloria Goldenberg, Natalie Goldstein, Abraham Gottfried, Esther Gruber, Fred Haber, Joseph C. Harris, Benjamin Hoffman, Estelle Jaffe, Leo Kaplan, Lillian Kaufman, Sylvia Kelton, Carol Kerner, Samuel Melamed, Theodore Morse, Charles Needleman, Sylvia Penkin, Beatrice Peretz, Carol Fortzheimer, Burton Strauss, Sadie Rosenberg, Jim Rothenberg, Fred Rudin, Miriam Tetsis, Diane Silk, Luce Simberkoff, Beatrice Smiley, Elizabeth Herman Smith, Francis Spivak, Irving Spivak, Ray Weston, Richard Zellner. If I've inadvertently pronounced your loved one's name, or if you have a name to add, feel free to say that name aloud or to yourself as we move to say the Mourner's Kaddish together. Yitkadal Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divra Chirutei V'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon Uvyomechon Uvchaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kariv V'imru Amen. Yehe Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Ulamei Almaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh. V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei D'kudsha Brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen.
A few brief announcements as we prepare to end our service. Our Shabbat celebration does not conclude tonight, but continues into tomorrow, first with Torah study beginning at 9:30 a.m. 9:30 we gather for a little bit of schmoozing and checking in with one another. The study will begin in earnest at 9:45, and also with our weekly family summer Saturday Shabbat experience at 10:30 a.m. Both Torah study and family summer Saturdays take place via Zoom. Please check our many e-communications to find the specific link, and please log in to help us continue to celebrate Shabbat, not just on Friday, but also on Saturday. This Wednesday, we will be observing Tisha B'Av, the day of mourning the many destructions that have befallen the Jewish people. We'll have an interactive service at 7:30 via Zoom, where we'll remember those many tragedies and mourn our losses, and also have the distinct pleasure of learning with and from Bex Stern Rosenblatt, who grew up at WRT and is now an accomplished Bible scholar of her own right. If you've never learned with Bex before, please join us on Wednesday night. You are in for a real treat. Bex is a terrific teacher, a terrific scholar. We hope you'll join us in commemorating Tisha B'Av Wednesday evening at 7:30. Rabbi Blake's Mishnah class continues on Thursday morning at 10:15 a.m. Please join us via Zoom to learn a little more about how the Mishnah is the essential building block of all of the Jewish customs that we all take for granted, like lighting Shabbat candles and other such things. And if you're interested in being a part of our ongoing pandemic response efforts, we need more hands, we need more volunteers. Please check our website and our e-communications to see how you can continue to be part of WRT's ongoing pandemic response efforts. Finally, we want to make sure to once again thank Dr. Deborah Kolodner for her inspirational words of Torah this evening. Deb, we're so glad that you could join us and help to inspire our community this Shabbat. We will give thanks for everything in our life that is sweet. So if you have a Kiddush cup at home that you'd like to raise into the air, please feel free to join with me now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
All right, time for my favorite part, which is motzi. I hope that those of you who joined my challah baking class this morning and this afternoon are holding your chalot that you made. I have one here. This is one of the 3 that I made. This is my spiced sugar one. It's just a basic challah that has spiced sugar on the top. So I hope you'll join me in motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, Shabbat shalom.
That challah looks delicious. I wish I could have a bite.
I wish I could share.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.